Hello.
Hello. Okay, guys, so we started recording. It's 3:01. If somebody's late, he can always watch the recording. So welcome on our awesome Core SIG meeting. I'm your today's host, moderator, and Piotr Kopczynski is my helper if it comes to notes taking. Thank you very much, PK, for helping me. And before we start talking about the agenda, kind reminder, please add you to the attendees list. The link to the agenda is in the Slack channel. I can also add it in the chat here in Zoom. Just let me know if you don't have access to Slack, which would be strange. Then yeah, let's go back to the agenda. So first of all, first topic we're gonna show, it's gonna be Piotr. He's going to give you some preview of what we are preparing for 07 release, which is right behind the corner. It's about the enablement of a additional new broker in the catalog that was usable now, but it was only usable during the provisioning. Now it's really available for runtime setup. He's going to tell you about the details, how it looks like now. And then I'm going to quickly talk about Kyma CLI, but really not much, just point you out to the release. We'll have a usual overview also of the proposals, just to remind you to take a look on them. If you have some different opinions, just share with us. And during the community slot, Gareth will give us an update on Knative and Kyma integration, how the working group is doing, and that are two quite big topics, let's say, documented, and he will give you some insight on it. And then at the end, if you have some questions, we're gonna have time for you to ask them. Of course, after each topic, if you have a specific question to a given topic, you are free to ask. There's no structure in this meeting. You can interrupt whenever you want. Feel free. So yeah, first is PK, please jump into the presentation, and I will be the one that is taking notes for this topic for you.
Okay, then I will be the first one that will interrupt you. Thanks, Łukasz. And okay, then Azure Service Broker at runtime. What does it mean? I don't know if you have watched the previous SIG core meetings, but I already shown you how we enabled Google Cloud Platform Broker as a bundle. We did the same really for the Azure Service Broker. And I will start with our bundles repository. It's the repository under the Kyma project organization GitHub. And we released the new repository with bundles. That's the version. And as you see, the new Azure Service Broker bundle is released. And that version of bundles is already in Kyma Master and will be fully supported in 0.7 release of Kyma. Then that's the place you can search for all of the bundles we are already supporting, and also brokers are here. Then I will just go to the Kyma instance. And of course, right now, the one broker which is installed during the Kyma installation is the Helm broker. And that guy really leverages the definitions from bundles repository. Of course, the Helm broker itself could be configured to other repositories. That means the Kyma bundle repository, let's say, is the default one. You can read more in the bundles repository how to create your own and expose the bundles in the Kyma service catalog UI. Okay, then I will just show you the documentation. It's under the question mark. Here we'll go to the service brokers navigation, and here you can first read about the Azure broker, what's that about, and how it is displayed in the service catalog UI. As you see, it's just a class that could be provisioned, and when it will be done, the service catalog offering will be extended with Azure service classes. Okay, then we can go back to namespace view this time, and I will go to one of the namespace, let's say QA. In the namespace brokers, you see nothing here. That means no namespace brokers are registered. But if you will go to the catalog, we see those three main bundles we release in 0.3, and the Azure Service Broker is a new one. And you can see that also it's marked as a local. That means some resources are installed into the Kubernetes cluster itself, and mainly it's the broker deployment. Then if we'll go to the details of that class, in the overview, we have documentation. First of all, big note that to provision that class, we need to provide a secret with credentials to Azure, and the below steps really describes what you need to do to acquire that secret, and at the end, it's just a matter of creation of that secret in the given namespace. That means in that case in the QA. And of course that we also mentioned that that broker, that class could be installed just once in the given namespace, because it doesn't make sense for you to install it twice. Then if we'll go to details, you can also read about the input parameters for that class. Also, there is one input parameter really that says what offering we want to shown in the service catalog, and the stable has just a couple of the classes. Then we have a preview, which is the candidates to be stable service classes, and there is a big bunch of classes that are called experimental, but they have really nice functionality. Then and of course that class is bindable false. That means we are not able to get a service bindings from that class because it's not supported. Then let's just provision that guy, and let's say I will pick up this table. Of course, I already provided a secret to that namespace, which has exactly such a name, Azure Broker Data. And without that, of course, the class will fail during the provisioning. Then let's pick up this table, and it's in the provisioning phase. We can see in the deployments and pods that's or not. There is some issue with caching. Okay. In pods, we see that some resources are right now deployed. Also, the broker itself is starting to be registered, and when the instance will be set that it's provisioned, we will see that the catalog will be extended. I will be back here in a minute. I will just go to the production namespace where I already provisioned the Azure Broker in the experimental mode. And as you can see, it's quite a lot of classes that we can pick up. And some of the interesting one from the experimental, for example, there is really nice text analytics class where we can really send a string with some sentences in any language, and it can give us, for example, give you first of all assign the language with some scores, and also other information that it's a positive sentence or not, and so on. Really nice features, and many other classes. I also provisioned the Azure Redis cache. I will show you in a minute. And you can see that also all of the classes, we added additional documentation describing every parameter that could be provided for the given plans. And what's the most important, we also document what will be the credentials when you will ask for the service binding. Now let's go to the instances. Okay, still Azure Redis cache still is in provisioning phase. It takes some time, then I will be not able to create a credential right now. But I can, in the meantime, I will show you that text analytics. Should be quite fast. It's also nice that there is a free tier up to 5,000 calls for free. You can see that we also contributed to the Azure Broker itself to improve the schemas, that right now we can select, for example, the location and many other improvements that we don't need to know those values, but we can just select. And let's create it. Then it's also in the provisioning phase. I will just back to the QA, maybe already broker with only the stable classes is already provisioned. Yes, it is. Then we can go to the brokers. We see that it's registered it's running. And in the catalog, you see it's much less classes than in the production environment. And it's up to the administrator really what kind of secret and credentials will be provided into the cluster. In that case, I just reused the same secret per 2 namespaces, but it could be even different credentials. Then, and of course, when I will deprovision the broker, all of the classes will be gone. And it's quite easy to really also clean up the installation if you don't want to use it. Okay, that's it. If you will have any questions about that, then let's ask at the end of the session. Thank you.
Thank you, Piotr. So I've added my notes as well. Thanks a lot. If there are no questions for now, let's move to another topic. Can you continue sharing, PK, because you need to show the agenda?
Okay.
Okay, Julio. So the first topic on the list, the Kyma CLI, I just wanted to give you some hints in this topic because we showed Kyma CLI some time ago on one of our Core SIG meetings. It's incubating project, so there are no, it's not really, the release cycle is not bundled to Kyma release cycle. But we know it's many people are interested with this topic, so just a reminder that we just released another version of the CLI. You might want to check it, and if you could click on the link, PK. And like I said, the releases are done independently from Kyma. So if you're also interested, like others, with this incubating project, just remember to reuse the Google feature we have. Could you click on the watch button, PK, at the top? So just if you're really interested with this project, just click on watch releases only. And yeah, we will not have to remind you every time we have a new release here. That's one thing small. And next one is the usual review of the proposals. So just a reminder, remember that we, the working model we have, we work with many changes we introduce through a proposals, which you can comment before we accept them, before we implement them. So just to point out, we have 3 proposals waiting for your feedback at the moment. The 2 first ones, the components folder consolidation and test folder consolidation, it's related to our continuous work on the improvement of the contribution experience. So we basically noticed that we are not really consistent if it comes to the naming of the components. It's hard to really differentiate without reading README to know which component is what really, which is a controller, which is a service, etc. It doesn't look good, so we want to improve that in that experience. The proposals are accepted mostly by all people, but if you have some different vision, please give us your feedback. And the third one, OK log replacement. So as you probably know, one of our logging components is based on OK log. But the OK log project is set to archive, which means we would like to decide what to do with OK log in the future. And there's a proposal that we would replace it with, instead of forking OKLog and continue the project, there's also some other project called Loki to which we could switch, and that's the proposal about. So if you're interested with this topic, please take a look on the proposal. And that's it from my side from these topics. And the next one is community slot, the working group about Knative and Kyma integration. Gareth, please, continue. If you have to share the screen, then let us know. Then PK
Yeah, I
have
would
to
like
stop
to
sharing.
share my screen.
Okay, so Piotr, you will have to stop sharing.
Thank you. Just give me a moment. So yeah, please let me know when you can see my screen.
Yeah, we can see it, and there's the agenda is there. But
Cool.
yeah.
So the first item we had on the agenda was to describe the Kyma eventing use cases. The need for these arises that because we are already aligning with the Knative eventing community, and as a part of the discussions, there was a need that most of the contributors and the organizations and the stakeholders that are interested in moving the Knative eventing forward, they should bring their use cases so that at the Knative level they can identify a set of minimal primitive use cases which can be built in Knative eventing itself, and then the other stakeholders or other organizations can derive their use cases based on what Knative eventing is provided. So I will quickly go through what in Kyma eventing as a use case we have at present. So starting with the first one, we have the traditional use case of extensibility and integration. We want to be able to extend any external solution. It can be a legacy application or a third-party system that is wants to do some new enhancements, and then via the events, we want to do those enhancements and extensions in the Kyma itself. So this is classical that we have the events coming via the API gateway and then going to the event bus. And from the event bus, there is a serverless that is able to consume those events, and then by consuming those events, it's able to extend the functionalities of the existing features of application. And at the same time, since we are building on top of Knative, and Knative provides this nice concept of pluggability when it comes to the PubSub solutions. So the event bus itself can be built on top of more than one PubSub. One can be a local PubSub that is like a batteries included approach, a minimal lightweight solution, but at the same time, there can be another cluster channel provisioner that can be talking to a cloud PubSub and then utilizing those features. So this is kind of quite nice. You have pluggability and at the same time, the possibility of using more than one PubSub as a backing service for the event bus in Kyma. So this is the first use case. I'll then go to the second one. This is something that we have a vision. We don't have this in place right now, but this is something that we'll plan to have at some point. This is more about how we can have these asynchronous workflows defined at a high level that can be used to achieve some business aspects. So this can be triggered via external, or it can also be internal inside the Kyma also. So it doesn't matter how it gets triggered. So it's all about that as a user or as a Kyma developer, at some point you should be able to define some set of steps that you want to do in a distributed fashion in Kyma, and then by passing the events via the event bus, you should be able to achieve that pipeline or asynchronous workflow features. Again, it can be backed by more than one PubSub, so it's all kind of really pluggable and configurable. Yep. Going to the third one is quite interesting as it's more about integrating with a third-party matching system, and by integrating with the third-party messaging systems, we can also consider integrating with the cloud ecosystem of that particular messaging system. For example, we can have a event coming from an external application, and then when we can send this event to a cloud PubSub, we should be able to trigger some actions in that cloud ecosystem. For example, creating a user in a Google Cloud PubSub or Google Cloud ecosystem, or creating some metadata object that is required for achieving some business scenarios. The other use case that we have is again a mirror replica of this one, but in this case we capture some events that happen in a ecosystem in a cloud provider's system, for example GCP, and we use those events and then to do something in the external application. So it's all about we can do some kind of synchronization when it comes to having the same state between the application that is connected to Kyma and then the cloud solution that is also used by the customer. So this is the first item I have, and I will now go to the second part, which is more about having a vision for the Knative adoption, how we plan to move further with adopting Knative in Kyma, and then how does the Knative eventing will help the Kyma eventing move forward, and how it will look like. So going further, this is kind of the high level view, how we see the things can evolve in the future. So we can have more than one event coming into Kyma, and then we can have more than one PubSub configured by virtue of using Knative, and it should be possible that we can specify for a particular event to which PubSub it can be stored. So this has interesting ramifications. So one of the interesting aspects is that this helps the customer based on the criticality of the events achieve the cost benefits. For example, for some events that are highly business critical, they can always go to a PubSub that is provided by a cloud provider, for example, Google Cloud PubSub or AKS or Azure. And at the same time, there are some events that are more for a kind of a fire and forget approach, and then they are not highly critical, so they can also be stored in some kind of a local PubSub or something that is not so costly as compared to going for a Google or some other cloud PubSub. At the same time, the same goes for the consumption part. You can also have multiple cloud PubSubs backed by Knative eventing, and then we have the possibility to consume the events from there. So this is a briefly high-level flow that displays that how two events are flowing and then how their consumption and storing is happening. This thing. And this has, we can of course decouple this into multiple concepts that together compose the event bus. So the first one is how we are going to provision a matching solution. So at present, this is left open because we want we want it to ensure that anyone who has the Knative eventing abstractions implemented, they can come and enable their PubSub inside Kyma. So there is kind of no one particular way of doing it. It can be done via any standard Kubernetes deployment or a Helm chart or even via service catalog. So this is kind of open, but it also makes it really extensible for different customers to bring on their preferred PubSub and then integrate with Kyma. Yeah. So the main thing that we are currently working out is how we want to integrate the Kyma event types with all those aspects of Knative eventing. And we have one idea floating out where we want to have one event type of Kyma aligned with the Knative channel. So currently this is based on the reasoning that most of the implementations that are done in the Knative community, they are following the same path, but this is a slightly heavy object when we talk about the Knative channel. This creates a lot of services behind the scenes. For example, it creates a one Istio virtual service, and also it creates a Kubernetes service. At some point, the Knative eventing might relook at this approach, and they might try to make it more lightweight or change it in a way that it is not consuming too many resources. So this is something that we might come back and then fix it along with the Knative. But for now, we are following the approach of having one channel and one event type mapped as one-to-one. Yeah. So going further, so there are a lot of details how the things can happen in the future. But the main thing that I want to share here is that we had some discussions how we wanted to choose a particular PubSub for an event type, because we want to give the customer and eventually the operator who is operating Kyma this possibility that they can decide which PubSub they want a particular event to go. So we thought that maybe we should start with something like the default PubSub for now that can be net streaming, and at some point we can provide a PubSub per application. So this is interesting because you have an application and then you already are in a cloud system, so you might want to prefer it for using it for that particular cloud-based PubSub as compared to something else. So when you configure application, you should be able to specify, okay, I want to use this particular PubSub for this application. So then all the events coming from this application will always go to that particular PubSub. And the same thing, of course, going to the really fine-grained use case where it should be possible that while you're registering the events, you should be able to specify out of the existing PubSubs what all solutions you should use. Sorry for that. So this is where we have a proposed design, and then we will take it forward from there. And again, we also reached one important decision. We thought about how we should create a channel, because when we create a channel in Knative, this implies that we are creating some backing resources in the PubSub. So one design aspect that came into picture was that Kyma is all about consuming the events and then triggering some compute or some extensions by virtue of that. So it will make perfect sense if we start only creating those resources when there is an interest in consuming those events. So whenever a subscription is created, we will ensure that only then we create the backing resources, including the Knative channel that is required for getting the events triggered. So this works quite nice. The design is quite elegant in that way. So there is only one challenge where we also need to cater to the use case that we are sending the events to a third-party matching system. So in that case, this is one exceptional scenario, and we need to give it some thought and then come up with the idea that maybe we should have some operator intervention where you can manually configure that we should create the channels upfront so that they can be sent to the external PubSub without even having a subscription in Kyma. So this is one thing that we might come up as a design. So this whole document, I won't go through all the details because it has a lot of things, but I would say that this is already present in the working group Knative, and I would kind of ask that if people can have a look and share their thoughts, that will help us take this design and proposal forward. So this is all I have to share today, and yeah.
Okay, thank you so much for that information. And do you have any questions? If not, then just remember we have open Slack workspace, so you can join the exclusive eventing channel, or also the working group Knative working group channel if you would like to follow up with some questions if you're too shy to ask them now, which is totally fine. Okay, so the last 5 minutes for questions and feedback. Is there anybody who would like to say something?
So just I recall, I don't have a question, but I think one comment. So we have already started with upgrading the Minikube version and the Kubernetes version for Kyma. And the PRs are already merged, and then we are already keeping an eye on the stability of that. So this will be the next final set. So currently we have the version for Minikube is 0.33.0, and then the Kubernetes version is 1.11.5.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, cool. So we meet again in 2 weeks, which should be already after our 07 release, because as for now, everything looks okay, all scheduled for 11th of February. So yeah, thanks a lot for joining, and enjoy the rest of the day.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Bye.
Bye.